Hi, class. We're going to be covering notes today, so get out your note folders. Okay, get your note folders out. You'll find your notes or your science folders. Get your science folders out. Notes will be in the middle of your folder in the tab area. So turn to, I think it'll be page 5. All right, look for page 5. And you'll find 1-2 living things. That means chapter 1, section 2, covering living things. All right, here we go. So if you had to pause to get caught up. Here we go. Vocabulary. They're going to be organism, cells, stimulus, response, adaptation, and homeostasis. I think you might have a development at the bottom. I'll get to that when I see you in class next. Here we go. Organism. Yourself, myself, dogs, and trees. Anything containing cells. So if it has a cell, it's an organism. If it is a cell, it's also an organism. A single-celled organism, okay? Next, cells. The smallest units of organism that carry on the function of life, or the smallest unit of life, simply stated. All right, so cells. Stimulus. Anything that an organism responds to. Example, a sound. Sometimes you get startled by a sound. A tree falls in the woods near a deer. Deer will take off. Okay, so that would the sound of the tree limb falling or the tree itself falling causes a response. Next, of course, response. Reaction of an organism to a stimulus. Example, maybe your dog's tail would be wagging and barking when it hears you pull into the driveway or you coming through the door. That sound of the door opening. Next, adaptation. When an organism adjusts to its environment. So we adjust to our environment by when the temperature rises, when we sweat. So what temperature goes up, that's the stimulus. We sweat, that's the response. And of course, evaporation takes place, taking the heat away from our skin, cooling us off. That's how we stay cool during hot temperatures or rising temperatures. Homeostasis, regulation of organisms' internal environment. So when you sweat, you're trying to regulate your internal temperature. You're trying to keep your temperature at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So homeostasis works in many other ways. Blood sugar levels. If you have too much sugar, your body's going to try to dispose of it by excreting it by urinating. You could also store it as in your liver. You can store excess sugars in your liver, and you can also store excess sugars as fat. It'll turn into fat if you have too much sugar in your diet. So be aware of that. So it's not fat that turns to fat. It can be sugar that can also turn into fat. Fat is fat. All right, moving on down to the next page. What is an organism? Well, organisms, rocks, dirt, and water are similar due to the fact that they have chemicals. Rocks and dirt and water are not organisms. Just because they have chemicals does not mean they're an organism. Organisms have cells, so they have to have cells. Rocks, dirt, don't. Rocks and dirt don't. Okay? Life functions. Okay? Reproduction, repair, growth, transport, locomotion, nutrition are supported by cells. I gotta fix this. Organisms have cells. Rocks and dirt don't. So that's what should happen here. Rocks. Well, let me fix it probably. Oop, it did. Rocks and dirt don't. So I'm saving that. Alright, whatever. Moving on. Sorry, guys. I'll get out of this stupid thing. Alright. So life functions. We already covered that. Again, reproduction, repair, growth, transport, locomotion, nutrition are supported by cells. Organisms are able to make organisms are able to make more of themselves, which is known as reproduction. What does an organism need to do to lessen chance of species extinction? Well, they have to reproduce. So this equals puppies develop into dogs that can reproduce and feed itself. So the individual species does not need to reproduce to survive, but the species does. So remember that. What does an organism need to survive? A change in body temperature is also known as homeostasis, for example. So homeostasis is what an organism needs to survive. The organism needs energy. All living organisms need energy to develop and adapt to their environments. All organisms need the sun, directly or indirectly. Plants need it directly. We need it indirectly because we eat the plants that rely on the sun. So the sun is the main source of energy. It causes green plants to grow, and organisms eat green plants, and organisms eat other organisms. So all life on Earth relies on the sun, main source of energy. Okay, moving on up. Organisms need living and non-living things to live. Non-living things include water, oxygen, and minerals. Example, a dog can live 2 to 3 weeks without food, but would die in a few days without water. What happens is when you don't have food, your body will eat itself sometimes. If you've ever seen pictures of concentration victims from World War II, on horrible situation, they need to basically, their bodies deteriorated and got broken down because their bodies was consuming their muscles for protein. It was breaking itself down. Living things are made of 70% water. We, humans, are 70% water. The earth is roughly 70% water. Some textbooks might say 75%, but it's in the ballpark. You get the idea. Difference between a response and a stimulus. A stimulus, response, and adaptation work together. How does this work? Well, let's see. I'm frozen here. Oh, there we go. Okay. So a stimulus triggers a response, which can then become an adaptation. For example, a stimulus which will increase in increase in temperature, so the temperature is rising outside. Okay. B, dog begins to pant, which equals a response to the stimulus. C, your body temperature decreases, which is known as adaptation to change in environmental temperature. So that's how it all works. That's how it all comes together in regards to adaptation, response, stimulus. All right, moving on. Now we got to go through the 5 traits of living things. How are you and your dog different? But before we do that, how are you and your dog different? And rocks, answer that to yourself. Okay, we're going to move on. So 5 life traits / characteristics. 1, organization / structure. Organelles of cell communicate with one another like our organs do. These are just little organs in the cell. We're going to talk more about that when we get to cells. Next, the nucleus contains DNA that organizes all cell activities. So down to the organizational level, we're looking at DNA. It's the blueprint of life, okay? Reproduction, number 2, second life trait. Organism's ability to make more of itself. So it could be down at the cellular level or as high as us as a complex organism. Organisms secure the future of their species. Organisms with the same traits that mate and reproduce offspring that also can reproduce. So that's the definition of a species. So in parentheses, that's the definition of species. Grow and develop is another life trait. That's the third one. Grow by increasing number of cells in a tissue. Bones get longer, which equals new cells. So for you get taller, get wider, whatever, you have cell reproduction going on. So cell reproduction allows you to grow. Moving on. Development, changes in an organism throughout life. For example, a tadpole turns into a frog. Next, 4th life trait, adjusts to its environment. An organism will adjust to its environment. How does it do that? Well, the environment is made up of air, water, temperature, weather, and all organisms. So that's your environment. Well, how does it adjust? Well, there could be a stimulus, anything that causes a response, like a sound. Response, organism's reaction to the stimulus. Remember, we talked about the dog barking or the tail wagging. Organism then reacts to its environment, so it's adjusting to it. The environment is a stimulus, most usually. And last but not least, energy. All organisms need energy to accomplish all the traits above. Sun supplies all organisms with energy. For example, sunlight converts water and carbon dioxide in plants to sugar, and rabbits eat the plant, which then gets the sugar from the plant. That concludes our notes. I hope you guys understood everything that I covered. Have a great day, and we'll see you next class day. Thanks.